Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about some lessons I've learned from working on League of Legends from 10 years. Just to give you some context on myself, I'm currently a senior manager of production on VALORANT. That's just a fancy way of saying I'm a senior producer that manages other senior producers. I've spent about 10 years on League of Legends in producer and product management roles. I started at Riot in 2006 as an intern back when the company was a startup. So I've been able to witness the journey of Riot and League of Legends going from kind of a dream and a hope to the game it is today. So I've mostly spent most of my time working on in-game content and things around in-game content, so mostly creative production work. But later in my career, I was able to transition more into monetization and storefront stuff to understand more the business and KPI-driven concepts of product and production. So I'm going to tell you all quickly about League of Legends for those in the audience who don't. So I'll do a real quick run through of what the game is and what it's doing, and then I'm going to talk about 3 lessons. Quickly, I have a bonus lesson if we get done in time. I doubt it, but also leave room for Q&A. But in contrast to some of the other talks, mine's mostly going to be more about the in-game experiences and doing product work around that. So just to temper expectations. Cool. So what is League of Legends? League of Legends is a free-to-play PC game launched in October of 2009. It is a MOBA. It is a game where 5 players join up with 5 other players. They choose from a roster of 150 characters at this point, all with unique identities, abilities, and roles to play in the game. And they battle against another team of 5 with champions and roles in order to destroy each other's base. It's a game that rewards skill. It's a game that rewards mastery. It is free to play, so you don't pay for power. You have access to play the game and earn skills and accolades by your gameplay and your abilities over time. But we sell cosmetics, and so it is a cosmetic economy via skins and other accoutrements around the game experience. League has grown into a very, very competitive product in that there are leagues around the world who play League of Legends competitively. We've built a robust esports platform where basically similar to the World Cup that we do every year, where we have regional leagues that compete for a whole season, and they all compete against each other in a worldwide tournament at the end of the year. That tournament is called Worlds, the League Worlds Finals, and that's all kind of fits into the ecosystem of the League of Legends experience. Competitive players have something to look forward to if they want to commit to being the best of the best in playing that game, and could find a path to mastery and even pro play where they can get sponsorships and get a salary playing with a team sponsored. But I won't get too much into that. I'm going to talk about what it means to service a global game at scale. League of Legends is available in 22 countries. It's played by, at peak, 100 million active players around the world. It's definitely doing very, very healthy after 10 years of launch. And what that says to everyone is that you have an international player base, each with their own different expectations of what gaming should be, what cool looks like, what cool in-game content is. And so a lesson for me was how to build content for this global audience that has a lot of different needs. How do you make something that is interesting to a player in Vietnam and in Texas and in Brazil and wherever? That's a hard challenge, and we as an organization had to learn through trial and error and gaining skills how to do this well. I wouldn't say perfectly, because it's never perfect. It's always progress. So I want to ask you all a question. I'll pull the chat up. Does anyone know who this character is if they play League of Legends? It's Garen. Hey, Bob Holtzman, cheater. It's a former rioter. So yes, there's Garen. Would some of you, if I ask you who's the hero of League of Legends, is this the person that comes to mind to you? You can answer in the chat. Nope. No. Okay, good. Someone said Teemo. That's actually the right answer. All right. So in general, when people look at like protagonists and antagonists for a product, right, this is a typical like Western hero. But if you asked Eastern audiences who they thought among surveys who the hero of League of Legends is, often the answer would be this guy. This is Ezreal. He's a scrappy young upstart who uses this gauntlet to shoot people in the face. I'm not going to get into the creative too much. But the point I'm trying to make is different countries have different standards of what cool looks like, what beauty looks like, what masculine, what feminine looks like. And so when you're making content, you have to keep those things in mind to go, this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution when you're making in-game content. You might have to tune appropriately. And in order to do that, you as content creators have to do your research and understand what resonates well with people across the world. There's certain things that are meta trends that all people think are cool, and there's certain things that are very niche and specific. So I'm going to tell you a couple stories in the content creation land from my time on Skins team in particular. So this is Tryndamere. He's one of our earliest champions in League of Legends. He occupies a role called top lane, and that is someone who plays and just beats people up on one corner of the map for the most of the game, and then helps their team out by the end. Now, Tryndamere is a popular character. He's pretty easy to learn, hard to master, but very approachable for the most part for most players, and he's a pretty decent onboarding character. So when we make our skins for characters in League, we definitely balance out which characters get skins over time, which characters are popular characters that we should invest in lots of skins for, which characters are less popular characters and we should do skins for in time in order to engage and satisfy the audience and make sure we're not playing favorites. So Tryndamere has a lot of skins. Many years ago, we created this skin. This skin was called Warring Kingdoms Tryndamere. We actually had a very big skin line that was inspired by Chinese mythology and Chinese legendary heroes like Lu Bu and whatnot. Every year we do a series of global events. A lot of them celebrate different regions and aspects around the world. So we usually do a big Lunar Revel event around the time of Chinese New Year, which is a big hit for most audiences because a lot of people understand what the sentiment is and cool warriors be cool, yo. So when we made this skin, we as Western developers thought this guy looks cool. It's a different variation of Tryndamere. He's inspired by really cool legendary armor and looks heroic. He's in the midst of battle. He got an arrow inside of his arm, but he's still leading the charge. What a badass, we thought to ourselves. Well, it turns out, despite all of our thinking that would actually be cool, he was actually not that well received, in particular by the Eastern markets. He did okay. He didn't do terribly, but he didn't do what we thought he would do. And we went back and asked ourselves why, and we started doing more in-depth research with different audience cohorts, we realized our view of what cool and heroic looked like was not the same as some of our Eastern regions. They said, this guy looks ugly, this guy looks scary, this guy looks mean. And that's not what a legendary hero is. That's not how we see it. So compare that to a different skin in that same line. This is Xin Zhao. He's a jungler, very popular character as well. His Warring Kingdom skin actually performed a lot better, despite it not having as many bells and whistles as Tryndamere over here. And that's because a lot of the fantasy that was being come into life in that content wasn't heroic, but this one was. And that did cause some other issues just in general with this image that we promoted the character with, because League of Legends characters don't ride horses in games, so there was some player management issues we had to do with that. But for the most part, just even the posing, the lighting, the positioning made a difference in resonating with the target audience here. And in general, it was a big miss for us. So we had to really take a step back in content creation and go, hey, are we doing our diligence? Are we doing our research to understanding what people think of when they think of aspirational characters and whatnot? So later on, we took the lessons from heart, and this was the skin I contributed on directly. We were making the skin for a character called Lee Sin. He's a very popular character in League of Legends. He's been around for a long time. He's a very high skill place champion. And what I mean by that is there's a joke among League of Legends players, and that is if you have a Lee Sin on your team, he's either a god or he's trash, because he's very difficult to really pull off a lot of moves with. But despite that, he's very aspirational. A lot of people, especially esports pro, can do amazing feats with him, so a lot of players look to him as someone they want to master over time. So when the time came for us to do what we call a legendary skin, this is a premium skin tier for League of Legends, we as a team decided we need to really do our homework and learn the lessons from previous skin creation. So when we were looking at his catalog, we decided, we really wanted to do something a bit different. I mean, he's a blind martial artist, so there's pretty much a limited canvas of what you can do creatively, or so we thought. And so when we were looking at his skin lines, we were looking at which ones were performing well, which ones were not, and what would we need to do to elevate this character and their fantasy beyond just martial arts bro and cool outfit? And so what we did as a team was came up with a couple pillars to really push push the thematic and really push the fantasy that we're trying to go for here. And we wanted to make sure we could find an aspirational figure that a lot of people from around the world could get behind. And so where we came up with this thematic was we wanted someone grandiose and fantasized. And we saw that in general, high fantasy, crafted well, tends to perform well if executed well. The idea of ultimate martial arts and artists and training, that's also an idea that tends to do well globally. And we wanted to make sure that you as a player would have an overwhelming presence, and when you're experiencing playing this character, you felt like a badass. And if you were playing against someone, you would want them to be somewhat intimidated by you. Although, it's all just looks. It's not going to make you a better player if you still stink at the game. So anywho, as a team, we started doing concepts. We started exploring based off those thematics. And we went back and forth and asked ourselves, is this aspirational? Does this skin make you feel like a god? And in all the explorations we were doing was really gearing and trying to pull that out using those learnings up from what we've done from other skins. And at the end, we came to a good spread of skins that we could have gone a number of directions in. And so I want to point, and if you can see my pointer, I want to point to these two examples on the bottom. This one in the middle is like a blue Lee Sin. And we as a team, mostly Western developers, were like, that one is amazing, right? He feels powerful. The blue feels almost like fire. It feels really fun to play. Maybe we should do that one. Let's do it. And we actually had a visiting QA member who was visiting from one of our regional offices. And as he was helping us develop this skin, he said, y'all should take another look at the color palette here, because from me being from this country, I don't see that as powerful. I see that as looking like an alien. This one over here, this golden skin, that one feels interesting and powerful. And we asked, well, why? And he goes, well, in our culture, these colors, these tones are actually one of high prestige and high fantasy and ornateness, and it begets power. And we're like, wow. So we consulted that office even more, and they gave us more insight into that. And we said, that's really good. We definitely want this to resonate as far as we can with as many countries around the world. Let's go with this gold color, and we doubled down on it. And I'm not saying you need to go to your regional office or do A/B testing to the extent to just pick a color, but I think you can be informed by understanding what matters a lot in different countries and how tone and palette can really make a difference in the experience because they grew up differently than you. So this was the end result. This was Godfist Lee Sin. We did a really fun marketing campaign with our own channels telling that fantasy of just being this like awoken god badass. And it became one of our most best performing skins of all time that year. And so we're really pleased with the diligence, and a lot of that was done by really spending the time understanding what would resonate globally. And we take that approach on all of our skins nowadays, and it helps a lot. So the conclusion of that lesson to me that I'll take to heart is that the details matter. A product is more than the sum of its parts. It also lets the audience feel like you understand who they are as people, especially if you're doing something that is specific to a region. One time we made a bunch of luchador skins thinking it would crush it in Latin America. It didn't, because luchadors are very specifically and niche to a couple regions. So, it doesn't always work out the way you want, but getting the details right do matter. And ultimately, when execution and resonant hit hard, you're going to have a higher chance of success. Cool. Lesson 2. This is going to be more about competitive gameplay integrity and how that can make a big impact on the engagement of your product and just keeping players in general. So I'm going to talk about how you play League of Legends. So for those who know and for those who don't know, League has several game modes. The main game mode that you see played competitively is what we call Summoner's Rift. That's the 5v5. Destroy the base battle. But we also have alternative modes that rotate in and out. We have ARAM, and we now have Teamfight Tactics, which is its own game in itself. But the way League had been played for many years is that there was normal play, where you just play to compete and have a good time, but still, show up. And then there's ranked. And ranked is sacred. And what I mean by saying ranked is sacred is that is where the true test of your skill can be measured against other opponents. That's where the ladders are formed to see who can qualify to be an esports pro. It is a very, very competitive and, to be frank, intimidating queue to play in. And what we learned from League of Legends over the years from surveying was that a lot of people are intimidated by playing ranked. And so we knew people who play ranked tended to stay if they can make that jump into that style of play. So we had to find ways to go, well, how can we get people in here? And so we came up with a product called Dynamic Queue. And the thought here was, you as a ranked player could queue up with people of different rank, because a lot of things we learned about League at the time was that the game is more fun when you're playing with friends. It's less intimidating. So we wanted to encourage people to play with their friends in ranked as much as possible. So we devised this system to encourage that, and it allowed you as a player to specify what role that you wanted to play, which is your position in the game mode, and then queue up with your friends to do the same, and then be match made with people of similar skill sets. Now this, in theory, should have been awesome, because you're getting people to play ranked, you're playing with your friends, so that's reducing the barrier of entry, and like it gets more people into the pool, which should, you know, increase competition. Well, that was not the case at all. In fact, it blew up so much from our community because we missed a couple key notes, and that's the competitive integrity of the perceived competitive integrity of the queue. It got so loud that we actually had to have a roundtable discussion with key community members to discuss what this would mean to the competitive level of sport and just the competitive level of play. And I think the net problems that the players brought up to us, which showed in the engagement numbers, was it diminishes the value of individual skill. Most people were able to play solo and duo ranks to climb up their ladder and then play with people of equal skills. When you start putting in people of a variety of ranks, throwing them in together into competitive, you're not sure if you're winning against people because you're actually matched right, or because they have someone who's just way better than the rest of your group. It became a real challenge, and it tanked some of our perception that year. So much for that we actually pulled it back and made adjustments to the product. And we had to address this head on to the community, where we told them, look, we're not trying to make League of Legends casual. We're trying to make sure it's a game that offers real competition to parties with the same experience, regardless of their ranking. And because our long-term vision is to be a global sport, we need to make sure we offer competitive play for everyone, from solo players to people who want to play with the team. So because that was getting violated, we pulled it back and made adjustments. But the big lesson we learned as a company is, just because the data was saying players have more fun and thus engage more if they play together, didn't necessarily come true in this execution. It's not to say that's not right, but maybe we went a little overboard there. So the net conclusion for us was that ranked play is important, but you have to do so in a way that doesn't ruin the competitive integrity, and balancing those needs are tough. So it's something you have to treat with a real deep and nuanced understanding and try to make sure is serving the needs. Because in the case of a competitive multiplayer game where skill matters, that perception trickles down to all the other queues, the normal players, the alt players. Because if those people aren't advocating for the product, well, then the product's not going to look as attractive overall. So that was a big lesson for us. And I'm going to get to my final lesson. And I'm so sorry, I have billions of them, but I tried to make them snappy and entertaining for you all. And that community engagement matters, and I put with an asterisk. And I'm going to tell you about how we do community management on League. In general, we listen to a lot of player-owned channels such as Reddit. Reddit actually is a very loud voice for us as developers. As I took this morning, we have over 4.5 million people actively participating on the Reddit, with 27.6K people hanging out just at that moment. Reddit can be very, very loud. And earlier in our days as a developer, we were like, oh my God, Reddit's blowing up. We need to pivot. We need to adjust. We learned over time that that's not entirely wise to do. We learned that because Reddit, just like any other channel of information, is a highly engaged population. It doesn't always represent the entire pool of players, especially around the world. Reddit in particular is a North American and Western European place where people can share information. It's not the only one. There's big groups in Korea, like InVen and other ones that also are allowed. So we use these things as kind of almost like wind chimes to let us know if there's something happening. So we had to learn the lesson that you can't just respond to everything the community flares up about. But if there is a flare up, there's probably something underneath that needs to be paid attention to. And I'm going to tell you the story of a flare-up that I was directly involved in. And it revolved around the 2015 World Championship Finals for League of Legends that happened in Europe. So there's a team, for those who may or may not know. And this was a big moment in League history. This was one of a record-breaking years of viewership. So at this point, the sport had been well established. It's growing and growing. The stakes are pretty high for viewership. The stakes are pretty high for the teams involved. And the team that won that year was SKT T1. They were from Korea. This was actually their second championship in 3 years. In the middle of this team is a player named Faker. He's basically the Michael Jordan of League of Legends. He's innovated competitive play over the years and is known for being a die-hard, fierce competitor. So when you're seeing Faker and his crew win, that's really exciting. So why am I telling you all that stuff? Well, every year, starting around 2011, we would commemorate the winners of the World Championship Finals with a set of skins that we would then sell and take some percentage of the earnings of those skins and share it with the organization. So for a long time, this was good enough. Just taking some of the colors of their uniform and styling our champions sort of to look like Esports Pro was fine. It was status quo. And people were fine with it for many years until they weren't. So when we debuted these 6 skins after SKT had won its second victory, we got this reaction.
Really well against their team. So the 2015 World Championship skins have been revealed. Do you like the skin?
No.
Well, it looks cool, but hopefully they will make it better.
So that's basically Michael Jordan taking a look at his new Air Jordans and going, meh. You know, that was a big deal to us. And I think the reason it was a big deal was, one, we accepted status quo and didn't try to do anything new. We were surprised by it, right? Usually they were low effort, I would say relatively low effort things to create. In general, they were pretty cool, but we did a couple things that were key wrong. One, if you looked at these uniforms, here, and this is back to details matter, if you look at these uniforms that they actually won the championship with, they don't match the skins uniform. We were actually referencing their season uniform from the season leading up to the World Championship. So players are like, why aren't you even putting them in their colors they won the championship with? You'll also notice that we had 5 skins. They had 7 players, including, which is usually 2 subs on the team. 1 sub didn't play much, but 1 sub did play a lot of games. His name was Easy Hoon, and he played in some pivotal matches. And so when the players of SKT and the players of League of Legends saw that we were missing one of the subs, it felt like a disrespectful moment to the player base and the honor of those esports players. So we took them back in, and we actually collaborated with the esport. We actually redid all of their colors and actually sourced the esport pros to send us videos of what we would want their recall animations to be in game. Now, we didn't have to do this at all. You know, it's an extra animation per character. That's a bit costly. But we felt this is a moment to do something special. This is a moment to do something commemorative and also to correct something that I think we just completely whiffed on. And so we worked with that team. They were very excited to do this and see a little bit of themselves put into the game. We re-debuted the skins. We added in that 6th character and redid the art. So that is not significant. That's like not cheap, right? It took a couple months to redo this, and we had to retime it the launch. But at the end of the day, the reception was great. The skins performed very well. And it was all because we took that extra time to do it. In fact, we took that as a moment to go, well, why don't we make this? It's obvious that there's a need here from the audience, and that is to make these a bigger deal than we perceive them to be. This is a moment like winning the Super Bowl, and they ask you, what are you going to do after the Super Bowl? Go to Disneyland or get your championship ring. This is a moment that could have been more than just a set of skins that we do to profit share with. So from then on out, we started the tradition of, after a world championship, meeting with the esport team and soliciting ideas for what they want the whole skin line to be. And so for 2016, SKT happened to win again. So we worked with them loosely to come up with a more fantastical thematic that they wanted to theme the skins with. And we actually added in their coach. Their coach had, this was the 3rd victory, so their coach had coached them to 3 times, and he begged to be in the game as a Teemo skin, and we didn't want to do that because he actually wasn't a player, but we commemorated him as a ward. But that extra bit mattered to the community. It helped move the needle for the product line itself and has now become a big tradition for us. So the conclusion is, Reddit may flare up. It's directionally accurate, but you don't need to respond to everything. But there are moments when you can choose to do so and make it a real win. And we as product developers need to look into that and go, where do we want to spend that effort? And in this case, it was a good lesson, and I think we made a good pivot, and we take that stuff a lot more seriously. This one is on promises. Okay, so in general, we learned a lot of lessons of communicating a lot of information to our player base and the cost of that. If you tell a player something's going to get fixed, they expect it to be fixed in 5 minutes. So if you show a piece of content without the right context, you could really get in trouble. We've learned that the hard way, so we try not to commit to anything unless we know it's going to happen. And we call that what we call the soon TM promise. So in any case, there was a time where I was overseeing a iteration of a personalized offer system that we have in League. And I'm going to show you all what that is right now. This is what we call Your Shop. And how this works is using data, we can analyze the play patterns of player and which champions they play the most games with. And over time, we'll get a log of what those patterns are. And a couple times a year, we run this program where we give them offers at random, not random, but a set of discounts at different thresholds to give them discounts on skins that they may like. And there's a bit of a random element. You might end up getting a nice sale on a skin you really, really like. And that's really joyous for players. This is a very looked after event. It happens about 4 to 5 times a year, and it's always a blast. Now, what the thing is, as with all, and I'll stop sharing now because I can just tell the story here. The thing with software like that is it's not always perfect. So for years, getting that the algorithm to analyze all that player data was very manual, and we would basically export this giant data sheet and have to manually insert it into the software application. And there were lots of moments, because it was a very manual process, for that to be wrong. And what I mean by that is if you run it too soon, you might lose capturing a week's worth of data, and a player might be upset that they didn't fully get covered by what they were playing. So we tried to pull the data 1 or 2 days before the offer would go out, and then insert it into the software. And we're doing it in 22 regions, so it becomes a real manual effort. And we actually had an error in one of the data sets for a North American and Brazil launch of this product. And we put the offers out there, and one of our data scientists came back to us and had said, things are off. So what we did is we turned the offers off and told the player base, hey, these are wrong, we're going to put the right ones in. And it turns out for an hour or two, players in Brazil and North America had said, well, I like those offers. I really would like them. So we, being a player-focused game company and liking to make good on things like that, myself and a player support manager said, if anyone wants to write in and take a screenshot of what those offers were, we'll honor that commitment. And what happened was 1.3 million player support tickets that had to be answered. And we got through it, we addressed it, we got through that load, but making that promise to players without consulting and understanding the impact of how that could result on our internal teams was a big lesson. So while players felt good, it definitely caused a lot of internal pain, and we had to do a lot of work to make sure that that system was a lot more robust when we launched those offers, to make good on it for players, because that's terrible to be running the wrong offers, and 2, just to make it better on your internal teams in general. But so the lesson I learned from that is pause before you make a commitment like that, and do all the diligence internally, despite it being a good thing that you can do for your audience. In the end, it turned out okay, but it definitely was painful for that week. So there you go. That's the bonus round.
In the first generation of mobile, gamers came off consoles from titles like Super Mario, Warcraft, and League of Legends. Now, as we enter the era of Mobile 2.0, with 3.5 billion devices globally, gaming has mainstreamed. Easy to play wherever you are, and something for everyone. The categories have proliferated. The best gaming companies in the world need deeper insights, a framework to capture the market opportunity. And now, introducing Game IQ, a revolutionary analytics product that delivers a taxonomy of genres, subgenres, and comprehensive feature analysis. Matched with App Annie's legendary market data, you have the insights to level up your performance. Designed exclusively for the rock stars of mobile.
The next question from the Q&A are, what do you think are the pillars of an effective survey feedback collection system?
We have a central insights team, and there's a variety of proprietary tools that we use, and we use Qualtrics and some other stuff that we integrate. On League, which is built on ancient code from a billion years ago, we've had to implement a lot of proprietary stuff, but we use something called the player feedback tool that targets different cohorts of players after they do certain things, and we can kind of hit them with surveys whenever we want. It's a little janky, but it works. We've been able to implement stuff like that, and then we have a good analyst team who can help parse that information to help the PMs make adjustments. But it took a lot of investment to get there, but it is helpful if you have those people on staff to do that.
Right. From a Riot perspective, are there specific games that you guys look at, like those guys are doing things right, or?
In general, I'd say there are some games that we definitely kind of admire. I think we've learned a lot from just being fans of Blizzard games and how they've done the live ops and services, especially WoW. I think we learned a lot from how they do things. But I'd say to be honest, we've taken some good learnings from some games in Korea. A lot of the Nexon games in particular, of what felt right to offer players, what type of events to offer players. And then in time, just evolving League as we gotten more refined with our hires and with our methodologies internal to know, like, hey, what moves the needle in certain ways or not. Like, it took us a while to get to the point of really understanding, the different competitive cohorts and versus a normal player cohort versus a casual player cohort. And as we kind of built those capabilities, we're able to tune accordingly. But yeah.
If you had one book to recommend that influenced your career work the most, what would it be?
Yeah, I'll talk about it. So I'd say if I had to stack rank, it's Playing to Win, What Strategy Really Means. And it's a book written by some people at Procter & Gamble. And it goes through defining product strategy as outcomes. What are the outcomes you're driving to do? And what it goes into is what you're not doing is just as important as what you are doing. And that can help you crisp up where you put your priority and put your resources. And that was really seminal for me in my development.
Hey folks, glad you could catch this presentation. So good to have you join us. This was actually part of a larger digital conference around best practices in live ops. So click the link to basically get the agenda for all of the other talks that were part of this conference and links so that you can watch the other talks as part of that conference. Also, if you haven't checked it out yet, check out App Annie's Game IQ product. Game IQ is a great way to get market data on the mobile gaming market, and App Annie was a sponsor of this conference. And finally, if you want to be notified of future talks and future virtual conference events, please make sure to click subscribe to the Game Makers YouTube channel and click the bell notification so you can be notified of future events coming up. We got a lot of cool stuff coming. So stay tuned, and great to have you with us. Catch you later.